We get on the apps, we see 1,000 people before lunchtime. So we keep thinking that the quirks of someone that we meet, we can find someone without those quirks. The brain has a sense of an unlimited resource, so we just keep going back. If I could wave my wand, it would be that people go on more second dates. Really get to know the person in front of you. Because when we are focused in this idea that the grass is greener on the other side, we just keep setting ourselves up for failure. The grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it.
Hi, and welcome back to The Intersect. I'm your host, Corey Corrine. Today we're talking about intimacy and dating. And I'm joined by Dr. Justin Garcia, the executive director of the Kinsey Institute and author of The Intimate Animal, a new book that explains how we are living through a full-blown intimacy crisis. Dr. Justin Garcia, welcome to The Intersect.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Yeah, it's exciting time. You have a new book out, The Intimate Animal, and your core provocation seems to hinge on this difference between, intimacy and sex. Maybe you could just start by explaining to us what that difference is.
What I'm really interested in is how we can think about how love and sex both operate in our lives, but also in our biology and our psychology, that there are multiple mechanisms at play and how we understand the tension between them. So at its core, I'm interested in monogamy. But as an evolutionary biologist, there's two parts of monogamy. We're always talking about two different levers. There's social monogamy, which is the pair bond, the relationship. That's the relationship structure that we form intense romantic bonds. Only 3 to 5% of mammals do this. And then there's sexual monogamy, which is fidelity. And those desires for the deep social connection with a pair bond and for sexual novelty can often be in conflict with each other, but they have different neurobiological functions or mechanisms, and they have different evolutionary pressure. So that's at the core of what I'm interested in unpacking in our lives.
As a sort of, common passerby of this information, you would think, okay, well, we were taught that these things were the same. They've somehow been conflated in the stories that we tell ourselves about how love comes to be or relationships comes to be. Was there a conflict that you thought you would go into? I mean, what sort of got you? I'm just kind of curious, the driver for the book itself. Has this always been your line of study?
Yeah, I love that you asked this because it gets exactly at the core of the issue. We walk around talking about relationship structures and assume they're the same. That when we love someone, that there isn't also tension and desire for sexual novelty. And that's not how the human brain works. When we really look at all of these different relationships of people of different demographics and ages and places in the world, that we do have this desire for close connection, but we also have that desire for sexual novelty. And actually, to your question, how I started was I was studying the evolution of monogamy. Our species has formed these intense bonds for 4 million years, and the incredible things we do for when we're in love and what happens in the brain. But then I was struck by a question. I was on a college campus, and our students go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and they were engaging in hookup culture. And it was really a theoretical question for me. How do I reconcile this literature about the intensity of pair bonds with what's happening in the real world around us on how people are navigating, exploring their sexual life? So for me, it was a real kind of academic meet reality. How do we make sense of all of this?
So you open your book with the girlfriend experience, something that could be purchased at a brothel in Nevada. And it's the most expensive option. What is the girlfriend experience?
Yeah, and I was
And why were you there?
Yeah, I was there for research, of course.
Yeah.
Actually, what brought me to Nevada, we were doing a study in a legal sex club. We were taking hormone samples in a non-laboratory setting. So that's what first brought me there. And then we took a trip out to this legal brothel in Pahrump, about an hour outside Vegas, and we got a tour. And there was a menu. The woman who gave us a tour, there was a menu of behaviors. And the most expensive thing, where someone could spend the most money of all the possible sexual fantasies you could fulfill in a legal brothel, it was in this girlfriend experience. It was couching any of those sexual interests in terms of a relationship structure. So you would share a bottle of wine, you would have a conversation, you would get to know each other. And then typically, although not always, typically a sexual event would follow. But it was couched in this social connection. It was couched in a relationship. And for me, that was such a profound moment of remembering that so much of our sexual lives is couched in terms of social relationships and connection. And that, when it came to the dollars people were willing to put on the table, sex in the context of a relationship, even a fake one or one that's being acted out for a couple of hours, was what was most desirable.
What did it really show you in your sort of early hypothesis? I mean, it shows me something very clearly, but did it like smack you in the head, or was it just further proof? Or yeah, what did it get at?
Early in my career, I was figuring out how people were navigating desires for love and sex. So, in the context of our hookup studies, I was looking at when we found 51% of men and women had a casual sex encounter, hoping it would turn into a romantic relationship. Found over half would spend the night and cuddle, even though it was a seemingly uncommitted encounter. For me, as a biologist, sleeping next to someone is a remarkable act of vulnerability. Organisms don't sleep next to each other unless they feel socially bonded. So I was asking those sorts of questions. So to your point, what we were struck by, my colleagues and I, what I was so struck by was of all the possible fantasies that people could play out. And there were themed rooms and people did go to play out fantasies. But above all of them, it was couching that in terms of knowing this person you were going to have sex with, of acting like you were on a date, of feeling like there was a connection, that whatever kind of physical sexual activity was going to happen, that you could even pretend for a few hours that you had a deeper connection for that to be experienced, and that was the source of the greatest pleasure, of the greatest joy that people were looking for. That I think I was so it just felt so powerful to see that and to know how much money people were spending in order to experience that.
Yeah, I mean, tell me if I'm $20,000
At the
some
time, yeah, that was
at
a
the
few years
time.
ago.
Okay, a few years ago, so maybe the price has gone up. We're in an intimacy crisis, a loneliness epidemic. We all want to connect. We can't figure out how to connect. To you, what is the clearest evidence of that by way of your research?
Oh, I think there's tons of evidence of this question. And loneliness, psychological loneliness is as bad for your health as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So we
I
know
hear
that
that. I hear that. Is that and that's a real thing? You're telling me as a
that's a
researcher
real yeah,
that
that's
it yeah.
researchers have really tried to quantify the magnitude of its impact on health. And we understand that it's associated with earlier mortality. It's associated with all sorts of physical and psychological ailments. That psychological loneliness is so powerful and so dangerous. But here's the catch. Here's the part of it that's so shocking. As a species, we are more connected than ever before. We have more connections. We see more people. We interact with more people, particularly through social media platforms. We have more connections to people. Why do we feel more disconnected than ever before? That's where the real shocker is, that there's something going on behaviorally, psychologically, and I think biologically, that despite these connections, they're not the kind of meaningful connections. It's really a question of intimacy. These connections aren't deep enough. They're not thick enough. You could have thousands of followers, but do you think that they hear you and listen to you and want what's best for you? What are those the quality of those dynamics? That's what we need. We researchers sometimes talk about the need to belong. We want to feel that we're part of something and that we are connected. We are a social primate through and through.
What you're saying has me thinking a lot about the great promise of connection. We've had the
Mhm.
great promise of connection for the last 10, 15, 20 years of the modern internet, but
Mhm.
really in the last decade, dating apps. And so we were promised this great connection by way of these apps. It doesn't feel like that's what's happening. The dating app experience, from my own experience, from what I hear, not working. You're not finding that intimacy. From your own research, what do you make of the sort of disconnect between the promise of this connection through these apps and then the reality of loneliness on the other end?
You're right. There's been this growing promise of connection. I think this is a promise that's thousands of years old. This isn't just one for the modern internet moment. The internet changed it in terms of our capacity to find information and to connect with more people. But part of what the human species has been doing is finding ways that we can accelerate but also connect with other people. We're not an organism that does things in isolation. And the challenge with a lot of our social technologies, and I think the challenge for how we interpret their influence on our lives, we have data that we ask people about burnout, and we asked about burnout particularly in dating. Yeah, people have pretty high rates of burnout in dating, but they also have burnout with the economy, with social life, with family, with healthcare. So we see generalized burnout. So there seems to be these widespread problems, and I'm cautious about suggesting that there's particular technologies that are driving those. I often think of social historian Stephanie Kuntz talks about the nostalgia trap. And we have a tendency to kind of romanticize the way things never were. And when people ask me about courtship and they say, well, the apps have made it really difficult. And I think, well, what do you mean made it difficult? Do you think it was easier 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago? When do we think courtship was easier? When do you think it was more fun? Or it's a competition. I think it's always been difficult, but we have new tools that give us more data, more noise, as you said, sometimes more slop, right?
Yeah.
And that introduces new challenges. I'm not convinced that suddenly the technology is making it more difficult. Some of the data, we have data from 5 nations that says if you're LGBTQ, it feels a lot safer with this technology. If you're a woman in a country without high gender egalitarianism, so we have data, for instance, in India and Turkey, those women feel a lot safer on a dating app than walking into a club to meet someone. I'm so cautious about the takeaways. There are absolutely big problems with the technologies. We've published on that in academic papers. We could talk about it. But I'm cautious about this idea that they've suddenly caused the problem. I don't think there's good evidence for that.
I appreciate what you're saying. And my sort of next question kind of moves into this where we are living hybrid lives. We're social animals, we're social primates, as you've said. We live that now by way of in real life experiences, physical presences, and what we do by way of apps, phones, all the ways we connect. Your book talks about how we've evolved to need human touch, but we're relying more and more on screens for that connection. Can we really substitute it?
Yeah, it's such a good. I'm so glad you're asking this, and I think I've been thinking a lot, for instance, about the role of AI in our dating lives. I think we'll probably talk a little bit more about that. And we found in one study that in a sample of people who were in long-term relationships, a third, 34.4%, said they're not touched enough by their romantic partner. Those are people in relationships and ongoing relationships.
Ooh.
Right? A
Wow.
third. And it's so important to us. And touch regulates. It regulates our nervous system. It's associated with oxytocin. It's good for our health and our immune function. Touching is important. Physical engagement is important. So my sense of what's going on, and there are some studies that look at this. So, for instance, if a mother and a child they looked at college students. If a mother and a college student, if they're in the same room versus they are talking on a phone versus they don't talk. Now, talking on the phone is somewhere in the middle in terms of the psychological benefits and the physiological benefits,
Hmm.
but it's not as good as being in physical contact with each other in the same room where you could hug, you could talk, you could feel the vibration of each other's voices. So much of our evolutionary biology is attuned to that, being in the same room and same place as someone. So I think that a lot of these social technologies, they get us partly there. It's better than total loneliness. It's better than isolation. Isolation is damning for our species. So technology can get us partly there. But then I think we have to do what the human brain has done so well for millions of years and then move to the IRL, the in real life connection. Give that person a hug, talk in the same room, invoke those bodily senses. We crave that in the context of courtship, but we also crave it in the context of social behavior more generally.
It can't fully be a substitute, but perhaps again, as we sort of live these hybrid lives, which, has me thinking about, okay, AI, which is really just an accelerant on top of all of the technologies and ways we connect over the last couple of decades, how that's evolved. And now, insert just a sort of mass ability to create message and meaning and simulation of emotional intelligence that's happening through these chatbots, meaningful connection. If someone says they have a companion and they feel connected to that companion, if they say they have a romantic connection, how does that strike you as a researcher?
Yeah, I'm of two minds of this. There's a part of me that's so cautious and concerned. I think that as we think about these technologies, whether it's in courtship and dating or whether they're these chatbot and we're having relationships, and young people are ushering in total new norms. We found that in a national sample of single adults, 26% are using AI in some aspect of dating, but among Gen Z, it's 49%. So much higher rates using it. And that's for picking photos, picking prompts to connect. But you're asking about these sort of chatbot connections, which is the next level. My thoughts have been that if they are for the purposes of filling in, you feel real loneliness, or you are really nervous about connecting, and that they can be really helpful, particularly for people who are neurodivergent, they could be really helpful.
Hmm.
That's great. But I think of them as training wheels. And in the best case, you want to take those training wheels off at some point.
I
That's
see.
been my thinking. But one of my colleagues, actually, here at the Kinsey Institute, Dr. Ellen Kaufman, has some new data that suggests that after relationship dissolution, people can really benefit from some of these chatbots of using sort of helping recover from breakups or thinking about forming new relationships. So there's more evidence showing that they have real benefit, positive therapeutic effects for some people. But at some point, I do think that we then want to move to the real, in real life human connections. So much of what the research has shown is that those human connections are associated with hormonal, physiological, psychological, social benefits to both physical and psychological health. So I think if we use them as a way to get there, that can be great for a lot of people. My concern is, and you were hinting at this, I think, in your question there, what happens when they become a primary source or the sole source? And I worry we could be going there for some people, and I'm not convinced that's the best outcome for our well-being.
Certainly, the physiological things you talk about and the inability to replicate some of that, or our species needing, like, I don't know, 5,000 more years or something to evolve to what this is. It's all happening so quick. I want to mention this example that went viral. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm saying it. More and more AI chatbots are causing wedges in real human relationships. Okay. There was a video, an unfortunate video that went viral very recently, a woman confronting her husband for quote unquote cheating with a chatbot. Why does an LLM feel like cheating?
Yeah, we asked this in a sample of single Americans in our Singles in America study that we survey about 5,000 US singles every year on attitudes and behaviors around love, sex, and social behavior. And quite a lot of people would consider it cheating if you had sex with a robot or if you had a deep connection with a chatbot. And part of it is that relationship dynamics, people in romantic relationships often want something special. We want to make something special. I have a pet name for you that others don't know. We talk in a certain voice. We tell each other certain secrets. We want there to be something about our partnership. The number one thing people look for in a romantic partner, both men and women across ages, it's not attraction, it's not smarts, it's not intelligence, it's not humor. The number one thing, those are all important. The number one is someone you can trust and confide in. So the idea that we are moving some of that trust and confide desire to a chatbot and not to the primary partnership, that we're not using it to cultivate what's special with us, but some of that special you're doing with this other entity, whether it's human or not, it feels like it's eroding primary relationships. That's why I think so many people consider it infidelity. They consider it a threat to their relationship. Because what are we if you're also telling this bot all the things that you're really worried about or you really want to know? Aren't we supposed to grow together? Aren't we supposed to learn together? Aren't we supposed to make mistakes together? And so I think that becomes this kind of existential threat to our relationships.
And that feels like it is only just we're at the beginning of what that could be as we continue to talk to these, you know, LLMs every day. Okay, you have all this data, you've done all this research, you've written these books. If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about modern dating, what would it be?
Oh, oh my gosh, I need this wand right away. What we could do.
Yeah, yeah, you have
um,
the wand.
I think one of the challenges that people have with the apps and with dating right now is our attention, so that there's so much data. Our species is not prepared for it. There's so much
Mm,
data that we meet someone and we say, well, this person is great and they're interesting, but they held their fork kind of funny. And I could get back on the app and find someone who doesn't hold the fork funny. And that seems so silly. But what our data show us is that people do this over and over again. And we have this real sense that we need to show up perfect to our relationships. In fact, in a sample we just collected, 45% of Gen Z, 80% want love, but 45% say they're not ready. So we have this sense that we need to work on ourselves and we need to get ready and you need to get ready, I need to get ready, everyone should be working on themselves. Okay, I'm going to get to the answer there. But in that mix of all of
this is
that,
good.
I think is we're struggling with too much data. We get on the apps, we see 1,000 people before lunchtime. So we keep thinking that the quirks of someone that we meet,
Mm.
we can find someone without those quirks. The brain has a sense of an unlimited resource, so we just keep going back. That's, I think, the real challenge of the apps and all the technologies. Part of it is not really the technology, it's the world we're in, it's the internet, that we have a sense of unlimited resource and that I'll find someone who doesn't hold their fork that way. So if I could wave my wand, it would be that people go on more second dates. And third date,
Ooh. Ooh.
really get to know the person in front of you. Because when we are focused in this idea that the grass is greener on the other side, that there's someone else who can hit all those things on my list, and there'll never be someone who hits all the things on our list. But when we have that in our head because of this idea of an unlimited resource, we just keep setting ourselves up for failure. Relationship scientists say the grass isn't greener on the other side, the grass is greener where you water it. So
The
getting people
grass
to
is green.
hone in on the
Yeah.
person across the table from you, go on a second date, get to know them, be curious. That would be my one, my goal, my gift for us all.
It's good. It's good. Ethical non-monogamy. It's, you know what it is. You research. This is your zone. It's pretty popular, and we're accepting it. I mean, okay, so great. It's a model. Do you think, given all the things that you've researched, given the state of where we are, do you think something like ethical non-monogamy could work and could be a way forward in our modern environment where you can just keep, swiping your thumb for something else?
Yeah. Researchers talk about ethical non monogamy. Some researchers use the term consensual non monogamy. Other researchers use the term negotiated non monogamy. Lots of different terms here. And these are meant as umbrella terms, including everything from polyamory to open relationships. One way that we can understand this is that people have different relationship structures. They have different way that they negotiate their relationships. It's not necessarily that one is better or worse than the other. They introduce different tensions and different opportunities, and we have to negotiate them. We're always negotiating those pressure points in relationships, and different structures mean different pressure points. In our research, we found that 1/5 of Americans, 21%, have at some point had some version of an open relationship, some version of consensual non monogamy, negotiated non monogamy, but a much lower number are currently in them. So, what that says is a lot of
Hmm.
people have tried it at some point. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a permanent relationship structure for them, but people try it. A brand new study just out suggests that the satisfaction rates in socially monogamous and non monogamous relationships are the same. So it's not necessarily that one is better than the other. They're just different structures. And I think a lot depends on what do you need? How do you handle jealousy? How do you handle um, communication in relationships? Different structures might work for different people depending on things like how jealous you are, how much you communicate, because again, there's different pressure points in those different structures. But one way I think about it is if we evolve this tendency for social monogamy and then also this tendency for sexual novelty, for variety, that you can be in a long term relationship and you find yourself pushed towards infidelity because you want novelty. So it's thinking about other people. Or you can open up your relationship and say, well, I want a primary relationship, but the way we're going to get sexual novelty is we're going to negotiate it and do it in ways that we agree to. Or you can do something else. You can be in a relationship and then say, let's take that desire for sexual novelty and pull it into the primary relationship.
Hmm.
So let's do things in the context of each other that give us a sense of excitement, novelty, um, both in and out of the bedroom. Those, I think they're just different approaches. I really do think that you're right, it's becoming more popular. It's certainly being talked about more. There was one study by Amy Moores that showed Google trends have increased for words around ethical non monogamy and swinging and polyamory. So people are talking about it more. We're more interested in it. It's unclear if the rates overall are going up, but I do think the research tells us they're just different ways that we can structure our relationship, but they come with different challenges.
The word negotiated, not really, that seems like that's a key one, and
Yeah,
how.
and neon, right?
All right, let's get into some rapid fire relationship questions. Okay, after all that we just heard, can a long distance relationship actually work?
Yeah, there's good evidence that long distance relationships can work. The challenge is when does it end? So if it's infinitely long distance, that's where it can be a real challenge. So if you're going away to medical school for 4 years, but we have a plan to reconnect, if you're away on business for 6 months, but we have a plan to reconnect, or we really prioritize when we talk, when we visit each other. So we do like proximity to our romantic and sexual partners. We want to touch them and feel them and hear them and see them and taste them, engage in the bodily senses. Long distance can work, but we really need to manage it. And in the best case, know when it's going to end. If it's forever, it can be really challenging to maintain a sense of connection to each other.
Do women grieve relationships more than men?
Oh, I love that you asked this. And as you know, I talk about this in The Intimate Animal. What we understand about breakups, I think tells a story that men are more romantic than we appreciate. So we know that
Well,
men tend to say, I love you first in relationships. They also tend to take a lot longer to grieve those relationships when they end. Men take longer for what we call post relationship grief. So the intensity of those feelings for men can often be more extreme, but in a context where a lot of men don't know where they can go to talk about their romantic feelings, to talk about the grief of love lost, that can get bottled up and can really be challenging.
wow, okay, I didn't that so it's like women do not grieve breakups more than men. Men are the
More
grievers.
intensely. Men grieve them much more intensely.
They grieve more intensely,
On
wow.
average, on average.
We talked about the mess of dating apps. What's the right way to approach dating apps?
Oh, my number one rule for dating apps is that we have to remember it's dyadic. And I talk to so many people. People will show me their apps and say, how's my profile look? And does this align with the literature and the evidence? The real issue is that we have to remember we set up our app and we're in search mode. And we have to remember that everyone else is in search mode too.
Mm,
So if you have one picture or you fill in one prompt, you might be looking for partners, but no one's going to really be looking for you. So you have to put out information that people will find interesting, and you have to give people an opportunity to connect. If you put a bunch of pictures of yourself, do things where you're doing things that you like or hobbies or that said something about you where someone could see your profile and say, "Oh, you went hiking in Machu Picchu? I've always wanted to go to Machu Picchu. Or I went so and so 10 years ago." You want to give people an opportunity to connect. So part of dating apps, digital courtship is not just searching, but it's allowing yourself to be found. So it's a two-way street. We have to constantly remember that.
okay, giving people entryways, it sounds
Mhm.
like.
Yeah.
What's the biggest indicator to you as a researcher of such things that a partnership will last?
When we look at long-term relationships, and particularly when we look at long-term relationships that are characterized by passion and commitment and connection, the research does show there are certain things that those couples do. They tend to pay attention to each other's needs. They tend to prioritize their relationship. So one way I think about it is there's three entities in any relationships. There's me, there's you, and there's us. Long-term couples that have high relationship satisfaction and high sexual satisfaction, they prioritize all three. They find ways to take care of themselves, they focus on their partner, but they also critically remember that the relationship dynamic itself needs cultivation, it needs care, it needs attention to connection and intimacy, whether that's lighting candles and setting the mood with certain lighting, or just finding alone time with your partner, or doing things, having a coffee hour in the morning before the kids are up. Whatever it is, finding ways to really connect with your partner through all the noise of modern life. Study after study shows that that is a powerful, powerful way to maintain romantic connection in the long haul.
My reaction to what you just said is, I mean, I'm kind of optimistic. It's,
Mhm.
treat your relationship like a priority. So
Yeah.
figure out how you do that, and in all the new ways that that can be done gives me some kind of hope, because it really is just about maintaining that connection throughout all of the different modalities that we're living in.
I love that you say that. And in writing The Intimate Animal and in all the studies I've done and all my colleagues here at the Kinsey Institute and studies on love and sex and connection and relationships, I am remarkably optimistic. I think that there's so much to be worried about in our world, but relationships, our ability to connect and our ability to cultivate those connections, I really do think that our connections are what can save us, that love is the best medicine. Science shows that I am remarkably optimistic about where our relationships are going. I think there's new challenges, wildly new challenges, particularly around social technologies. But we are a species. 4 million years of evolution has honed in our capacity to form deep, powerful connections. I think we're up to this particular moment, and I actually think we have a lot of bright, passionate futures ahead.
I mean, this really does bring me to my closing question and just conversation with you. It seems to me that what you're positing in your book is that intimacy is one of the most powerful forces shaping our humanity, our evolution. It's important in our survival. If we can't, though, get that right, if the screens continue to get in the way, if we don't sort of go that other halfway, if we just stay on the one side of the screen, what do you see is at risk here?
Yeah, a lot is at risk. I mean, and there is a lot at risk in terms of our mental health, our physical health. We understand more and more, for instance, oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone. We know more and more that it's tied to the immune system. And experimental studies looking at wound healing, for instance, people with higher oxytocin have better wound healing. How do you get oxytocin up high? Social cohesion, social connection. We understand more and more about how important feeling connected to other people is, both for physical health and mental health, and for happiness and for satisfaction. So I think where technology becomes a distraction from helping us find partners and maintain the connection, and when they distract us from maintaining connections, that is a problem. I think it's a problem more people are struggling with and talking about. I think that's a good thing that we're talking about it, because the human animal's intense desire to stay connected, I do think we will overcome this. Technologies developed to solve a problem. They found to solve a problem of finding people, of working through the noise. But they've created new problems for us, and I do think we will innovate around them. I do think more and more people are realizing what's at stake, and we're not going to lose the power of human connection. It does so much for our well-being and our happiness, and I think we will adapt. We will adapt to this moment. I think we're going through a period of some growing pains of adapting to these technologies, but I see light on the other side.
Dr. Justin Garcia is the executive director of the Kinsey Institute and author of new book, The Intimate Animal, which is out now. Dr. Garcia, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be with you.